You're listening to the Straight A Conspiracy Podcast.
And now we're going to talk in more detail about mistakes.
Mistakes.
How exciting. I love making mistakes.
Learning.
Do you know why I love making mistakes, Katie?
Why, Hunter?
Because it's a missed take. It's a lot like, being a famous movie actor like Brian Callen. Because because if it's a mistake, that's okay. You can always have another take, and then you can figure out from the take that didn't work, how should you now do it differently, right? So the point
I'll
is...
give you that.
Yeah.
Even with the stretch and wordplay.
Yeah, and the stretch of Brian Callen's fame. But yeah, there are mistakes, and, that's okay. And then like the FAA, we want to learn from those mistakes to make things better, to improve our process, to make things safer. That is a big difference in approach from how a lot of other people have approached mistakes. For example,
so the FAA, they spread, when there's a plane crash, they spread all the pieces out. They analyze every little piece of the plane. They listen to the black box recording.
Yeah.
They figure out exactly what went right, exactly what went wrong, so that type of crash never happens again. Super thorough, no shame about it happening, right? It's like, it happened, we acknowledge it happened, let's deal with it. So and what's the other option? The
Soviet option.
Uh-oh.
The Russian option.
Okay.
So the Russians were less good about embracing and analyzing their mistakes and having transparency about it. And they just preferred to deny, shame,
Yeah.
hide. Let's put it away. Let's not talk about it. And the result was that...
What plane?
What plane?
That's right.
What passengers? And so the result is that the safety record was not so good. And
Weird.
The, Aeroflot, which was the Soviet airline, was often called Aeroflop because it had this terrible tendency to crash.
Yeah.
And, things have changed now. I believe that things are safer. But the point is that these two very different approaches to how you deal with mistakes lead to very, very different results.
Yes.
And some people really embrace and analyze mistakes. And if you look at any successful group of humans, whether it's the FAA or Silicon Valley is big into embracing and analyzing mistakes.
Yeah.
They talk about failing forward. So you're going to mess up, but then how do you use those mistakes to improve the way that you do things?
That's right.
Some athletes operate in this way, and then some people don't. For example, my own athletics, which is not the Soviet let's win all the Olympic gold medals approach. No, it's much more the shame. Let's not talk about it.
Let's hide this and pretend it never happened.
But the problem is that you can't really hide the kind of practicing you have or have not been doing, because then it comes for game time or a test, and then it's all revealed before the world. And that's always the funny thing is that so many of our students try and play this bizarre propaganda game of you come home, mom and dad are there, and they're like, how's school going? And it's like, oh, it's going really great.
It's fine.
It's going really great. No, I like the ones who really upsell. They're like, no, it's going really great. I have it totally under control. Oh yeah, it's fascinating. I'm really loving it. Totally. Just aced it. Amazing everything.
Yep.
Right? And then, of course, mom and dad are going to see the report card at some point.
Yep.
Like, the secret is going to come out, guys. Like that, you can only bury that wreckage for so long. And so crucially, part of what you want for yourself as a student or as a learner, whether you're, 6 or 60, is you want to get all that wreckage out. You want everything in the open. You want to be talking about how, hey, listen, actually, I have no idea what's happening in this class. Like, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And then you can start to deal with what's not working. And what's so great about that FAA, Federal Aviation Administration example that you gave, Katie, is that, you think about a plane crash. There's a lot of things that can make a plane crash.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different ways that a plane can go from flying to not flying.
Not flying. Yeah.
And it could be, there's a problem with the computers. It could be that there was,
an errant goose.
An errant goose.
Yeah.
Could be some pilot error.
Yeah.
Could be something with the fuel. Could be that somebody brought some kind of battery from some kind of phone that then blows up and when you're that high above the earth.
Yeah.
So there are lots and lots of things that can go wrong. And it really this sort of accident investigation, really you have to be patient. You have to pick through and you have to really start to figure out what was it that caused this mistake? And the same thing is true when you're dealing with a bad test grade or with a bad essay.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When the bad test grade or the bad essay comes to you, it's just like got that huge red letter at the top, which is really not fun to look at. And we talked about this when we talked about shame. Like, if you feel horrible about that grade, you don't want to keep looking at it. Too bad. That's the reality. Is like, yeah, of course, no, it's not fun to keep looking at it. It's not fun to keep looking at a bunch of red X's on your test paper, but that is actually the only way to get better. And so it's about getting over that initial hurdle of how it feels to engage in it and saying, and just shifting your mindset so you can say, okay, great, awesome. Now I have these 5 went well. So that means I know those 5 things. Great. And these 5 questions did not go well. So now I know exactly what I need to work on. This is awesome. And being able to dive right into that. And those are not the only kinds of mistakes. I mean, we take those mistakes a little harder, you know, mistakes that are on tests and quizzes because they have a big red X on them, which feels terrible. And because it feels so final. It feels like a pronouncement of like, you are not good at this thing. But there are also little tiny mistakes that you can pick up all along while you're doing your homeworks, while you're doing the reading for a class, at any point when you're learning a new skill before it comes actual test day, that you can do something about and be constantly fixing.
And in fact, the real goal is to find problems
before they happen. Yeah, exactly. And those are exactly those kinds of problems that arise beforehand are exactly the ones that we always want to skip. So many students we've worked with, and you know, we do this ourselves when we're in a hurry or whatever, don't do the most basic fixes that are possible, right? Looking up words you don't know. When, instead of just blowing by it and being like, oh, I don't know that word, it's fine, I'm still really good at reading, it's fine, and going past it, like, no, if you don't know it, that just means you haven't seen it before. No big deal, but stop and look it up, because guaranteed your understanding of that sentence will be better if you know what that word means. You know, going back and checking your work before you hand it in to see if you've made little mistakes, to see if you've had a careless error, or if there's something that keeps not seeming right over and over. And that way you can actually find the things to get better at them.
That's right. So a lot of this is just, you know, your job as a student is debugging, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, you know, as I'm going to give an analogy that makes not a lot of sense to either of us.
Can't wait.
Writing code. You know, all those times we write computer code.
Yeah, so tired from writing all that code today.
Yeah, I coded so hard.
Yep.
But you know, in computer code, I have enough of a sort of distant awareness of computer coding to understand that like there's a lot of lines of code and there are a certain number of bugs. Right? And you have to go through and sort of methodically pick out what are the bugs. Oh, line 17, line 95. And so that's very much what you're doing with your process as a student is you're like, Mo, this word made no sense. Okay, my teacher just used it. Keeps on using this word every single class. Australopithecus afarensis. Should probably find out what that is. Or, you know, or let's say that it's like, okay, composite functions, I can say the words, but I don't actually know what they are. I don't know how to do them. And the job of, you know, the student, and by the way, guys, this is the job of life in the 21st century, is to be constantly debugging and refining, learning, unlearning, and relearning, and just improving your process in any way that you can. Like, for example, just there, I have my notes on my leg, and then it fell off, which is, you know, a thing, and then I slapped my thigh to try and stop them from falling off, which all just made it worse. So I learned a great...
So next time your notes fall off, you would know
just
to
let
do
them
it
go.
in a new way. It's good, guys. We're making so much progress here today. But that kind of specificity in getting better that we're talking about too, that's a thing that you know, has been termed deliberate practice, but we like to call it fix-it-focused practice. Fix-it-focused practice is actually the key. It's kind of the only tool you need to get better at anything. If you can just be managing your emotions enough that you can do fix-it-focused practice, you will become better at whatever you're practicing. That's right. And that's because it's all about not at any point looking at the thing you're trying to do and going, ugh, math is hard. No, math is never your problem. Math is too big a problem for any one human to fix in its entirety. We haven't even, like, math isn't even complete yet of being figured out, right? So math is too big, but if you can actually break it down to exactly where are things going wrong, exactly what do I need to do? Oh, my problem isn't math, it's fractions. It's multiplying fractions. And then you can just fix that one thing until it's rock solid, until it's automated. And then that's set for life. Now you automated it, great. You can move on and find the next little piece. And if you ever watch any experts practice, that's the way that they do practice too. And it's very telling. So, you know, if you watch a professional musician, a concert pianist or somebody rehearsing a piece, they do not sit down and play the piece from start to finish and where they aren't really sure about a couple of measures at a time. They're just like, and just kind of like blow through it and move on to the next section because it's cooler to look like you could do it from start to finish than get it right. No, they're there to get it right. They're there to be perfect at it. And so what that means is that they'll play a little bit, and as soon as they run into trouble, they'll back up a few measures. They'll play just those 2 measures over and over, over and over, over and over until they have it right. Great. Now they go back. Now they play through all of that part until they hit the next problem. Okay, now we just pick apart this little part. And then the parts come together, and eventually the whole is perfect. But that is not how a lot of students go through reading or units of math or anything like that.
Well, I think, Katie, you're drawing a distinction here between looking good or trying to look good and getting better.
Yes.
And they lead to 2 totally different sets of behavior.
Right.
So, you know, looking good.
Looking smart and becoming smart.
Right. And the point is that looking smart, we encounter a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who try and use big words or who try and posture and sort of act like they have it all figured out, but they're not really.
Big word thing is my favorite, by the way. Anyone who, like, doesn't actually know how to structure an essay or make an argument, but they feel like as long as they use like giant crazy vocabulary, then that'll be the mark of a really smart. Intuitive essay. And then you read it and you're like, none of these words make any sense.
Would you say an erudite individual? Speaking of which, favorite long word of all time, sesquipedalian.
Great word.
Because sesquipedalian means excessively long.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are people who, love that.
I appreciate that word for its irony.
Exactly.
Like sense of irony.
But so there's a lot of people who try and fake it.
Yeah.
And you will encounter a lot of these people in your life.
Faking it gets you a little of the way.
That's right.
But not the whole way.
That's right. And you're far better off not trying to fake it and just sort of embracing, putting the white belt back on, embracing. You know, I talked to the guy from the Marine Corps recently, and he said the Marines have this expression, embrace the suck. So, so, you know,
that's great.
Sometimes you just got to embrace the suck. You're like, I'm terrible at this. This is uncomfortable. I'm putting the white belt back on, and then I'm just going to make that incremental improvement and just start fixing anything I can. And if I just keep fixing anything I can, then I'll get better. And, you know, again, like very often, if you look at what's going wrong in a test or what's going on in academically, right, it might be that you knew all the knowledge and then you got into the test and you freaked out and then your mind went blank. And so the problem isn't the material, it's actually just your emotions. But
you have to be able to tell that.
That's right.
Yeah, I was going to say there's so much of mistakes is wrapped up in emotions. Those 2 things go hand in hand because when you see a mistake that you made, you have 2 choices, right? You can either decide, oh my God, I'm so dumb. I hate myself so much. I can't believe I did that wrong. What is wrong with me, right? And then, of course, you're going to not look at the mistake, not address it, push it away, kind of maybe not engage with that thing anymore at all, and walk away from it. Or you can train your brain to have a different relationship to mistakes. And it sounds ridiculous, but if you can get yourself to the point where you're like, yeah, mistake. Like, this is what I wanted because I got a 90, but that means I got 2 questions wrong. Yeah.
And I'm going to learn something there.
Yeah, exactly. And like, but that's what's true. Like when you get into your adult life, that is how you have to treat mistakes. And guess what? No one's giving you a grade on a daily basis. So you have to catch those things that are going wrong on your own. And so the better you become at being excited to find those things that aren't quite right yet and just target them, do that fix it, focus practice and make them better, that is how you stand out in any field, no matter what you want to be. That is the key.
And also, crucially, it just makes the whole process much more enjoyable because you're focused on the process.
Yeah.
You're not focused on you. Who am I good enough? Am I not good enough? Like, none of that stuff is there. And I think, a really great example of this is always cooking, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you look at, chefs are trying to, produce really quality food every single time. But, it's not that, that you don't have the luxury of even being like, I didn't get the steak gene, right? Or, I just don't know how to make peppercorn sauce, right? What you have to do is you have to be like, this has to work. Like, there's time pressure. We've got to make this thing work. And then you're constantly trying to improve your process, make it more effective, make it more reliable. Mm-hmm. And in many senses, that's what school is like. You're a chef. And, if you're producing a lot of stuff that's getting 3-star reviews on Yelp.
If it's burnt, you got to, and you can see it. You see this, but watch Top Chef all the time. And, when something gets messed up, when it's on the flame too long, when it gets burnt, without hesitation, goes in the trash.
That's right.
Start it over again. There's literally no emotional context around it. It's just like, oh, nope, that went wrong. Start over. Boom.
That's right.
And that's it. And then you're on to the next thing, and now you have one that is working.
Or another great analogy is video games. Mm-hmm. Because it's always, strange because we'll so often watch our students playing video games, and they just die a lot.
That's what it is when you start a new video game. When you buy a new game, right? You die. You die on level 2 like 37 times. Yeah, and then you don't sit there and go, oh my God, I just didn't get the Call of Duty gene. What's wrong with me?
But it's sort of when you say like you should be excited about mistakes, that sounds crazy. But actually, students are excited all the time about a game that is so tough that it makes you die again and again and again.
Yeah, if you can't beat the last guy on that level, every mistake is just one step closer to figuring out how to defeat him. You're like, okay, so going around and through this little passageway didn't work. Okay, this time I'm going to do the machete. Yeah. No, I died again. Okay, so it's not passageway or machete. Now it's this, and they just like figure out. They use each thing as like a little different point of attack until it's solved.
Your description of video games is a lot like when I describe coding or sports.
Yeah, it's vague. It's vague. I haven't really played anything since Super Mario 2, I want to say.
That sounds about right.
And a lot of Fruit Ninja, but that's
Fruit Ninja. Yes. But anyway, the point is that sort of approaching school like a game.
Yeah.
Right? And it's okay if you die on a level.
Yeah.
Right? And if you die on a level, that just means this is a tough, fun, challenging game.
Yeah, it also wouldn't be that fun of a game if every single level you passed it with no problem.
That's right.
Like, what's the point? That was a waste of money.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of missed takes, part of it is just sort
Going for it.
Yeah. Part of it is just approaching all of this like a game.
Yeah.
And like it's, it's okay. Like you're going to die. You're going to die on level 2 37 times, whatever it may be. But the big thing in terms of getting good grades is when are you dying, right? So are you dying on level 2 37 times in your own practice at home? Or in the big tournament, in the test.
Right.
And that's, so much of it is that very often students aren't preparing for the big tournament at all.
Or are you dying the same way each of those 37 times? Right. Are you, like, the passageway didn't work, and so you try the same passageway again? Right. No. You try a different thing. Yeah.
And as Einstein said, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing and expecting different results. And so very often, we help our students deal with their insanity. Because often they've been doing the same thing, getting the same results, and rather than improving their process, rather than doing fix-it-focused practice, rather than trying something different, they just keep banging their heads against that wall.
Yep.
And they just want to throw more time and more energy at their schoolwork.
Yeah.
And so that's why in the next podcast, we're going to be talking not just about what grades are you getting, but what is your experience like and what is your process like?
Yeah, totally. Yep, but that's the deal. Fix it, focus, practice, and love those mistakes. Mistakes are your best friend.
Yummy.
Thank you for listening to the Straight A Conspiracy with your hosts, Katie O'Brien and Hunter Motz. While Katie and Hunter are the faces of this podcast, they couldn't do this on their own. They have been lucky enough to have a group of dedicated people help them to get these ideas out there. Brian Jennings, a media literacy expert and author from Rhode Island, edits all of the podcasts. Andrew Hunt in LA helped film and record them. Mandy Ainsley in Johannesburg, South Africa, created a better website. And Josh McKenty, a marketing guru from New Zealand who wishes that he had this book when he was a kid, is devoting his time and energy to make the message of the Straight A Conspiracy accessible to everyone, everywhere. And you can help too. To find out how, visit thestraightaconspiracy.com. It's time for everyone, everywhere to know their own potential and get equipped with the tools to unlock it. While Katie and Hunter love books, they are also screenwriters, directors, and actors. Josh McKenty had the idea to make a multimedia online version of the Straight A Conspiracy. We're calling it the Straight A Conspiracy Bootcamp. It's the one-stop shop to onboard humans into the 21st century. It will be entirely digital so we can distribute it to millions of people that much faster. If you want to support the podcast and this movement in an easy way, simply visit thestraightaconspiracy.com and click on the Amazon affiliate link before you make any purchase. Amazon will give us a piece of that sale. More money means more podcasts, and more money for a project we're very excited about, the Straight A Conspiracy Bootcamp.